The Saiyans have been recalled to planet Vegeta to be annihilated by Frieza, but Bardock can tell that something isn't right. After learning that Frieza is trying to gather information about the Super Saiyan, he realizes that Frieza is going to destroy the planet and the Saiyan race along with it. There's no time to waste. His mate Guinea is a kind Saiyan and her kindness has rubbed off onto him. He has the urge to save a life. Just this once. Bardock wants to save his infant son, Kakarot. After convincing Guinea to send Kakarot away, Bardock steals a ship and has to pick a world suitable for sending a low-class warrior to. Together, they look through the charted worlds and find one that is restricted, but also has no notable power signatures, only wildlife. Perhaps this world is one that Frieza has no interest in, making it the perfect place to send their child. With a solemn goodbye and the hope in their hearts that they can retrieve him after the dust settles, Kakarot is sent away, but Bardock and Guinea were wrong. While Frieza, King Cold, and even King Vegeta were aware of the God of Destruction Beerus and his world, the low-ranking Saiyans weren't told of it. This world was restricted not out of lack of interest, but because it was owned by the most frightening being in the universe, Beerus. As Kakarot's pod flies through space towards Beerus' world, the God of Destruction has received most interesting news from the Oracle Fish, a being who can foresee vague fortunes that will come true. The Oracle Fish told Beerus that his greatest rival, the Super Saiyan God, would appear in 39 years. Beerus is intrigued, but isn't sure a Saiyan will be a worthy adversary, not to mention the fact that Beerus had already given Frieza permission to destroy planet Vegeta and the Saiyan race.
You earn your stay with your prophecies, Oracle Fish, but do not play me for a fool, or I will destroy.
Before Beerus could finish his sentence, an object fell from the sky, crashing directly next to him. When the smoke clears, he recognizes the object immediately. It's a Saiyan space pod. Usually, these types of ships were reserved for missions of conquest. Has Frieza become so brazen that he thinks he can use the Saiyans to overtake the planet of the God of Destruction? Was the planned destruction of planet Vegeta a diversion? Regardless, Beerus raises his arm and begins to form a Hakai. He'd like to see the fear and the surprise in the eyes of his enemy before he destroys them in an instant. However, Beerus is the one with surprise in his eyes when the pod opens to reveal a Saiyan child was the sole passenger within.
Is this some sort of joke?
This insulted him even further, and he was ready to destroy the child, but that's when the Oracle Fish says she doesn't recommend destroying that Saiyan child. Beerus is about to ask why, but then it begins to all add up in his head. This is a Saiyan child who landed on a god's planet. If the Super Saiyan God was to appear in 39 years, they would be a child now.
So,
Beerus bends down to be at eye level with the child.
You're going to give me the fight of my life, huh? I look forward to it.
The God of Destruction stands up and walks to Whis. He tells the angel to train the child, since there's no way he could be any fun if he just gained strength on his own. As you wish, my lord. Beerus lets out a powerful yawn and retreats to his bedroom, where he sets an alarm for 39 years, when he will reawaken and face the supposed Super Saiyan God. Before getting any deeper into that though, only 20% of the people who watch these videos are subscribed, so make sure you hit that sub button so you never miss an upload. You could always unsub in the future if you change your mind. Whis goes to pick up the Saiyan child to try and soothe him, but Kakarot lashes out against him. My, the first thing we'll have to do is settle that temper of yours. Then some basic education with some training on the side. I wonder if 39 years will truly be enough. Well, best to get started now then. Whis puts Kakarot in an energy bubble to move him around in a way that he can't be rowdy. As the years pass, Kakarot grows. Whis used his staff to peer into Kakarot's past and discovered his name, and thus Kakarot sticks as the name for the Saiyan child. After one night of Kakarot turning into an Ozaru, Whis promptly and permanently removes the Saiyan child's tail before he could cause any reckless destruction. Whis then goes on to teach young Kakarot how to speak, fight, and even begins to train him in the ways of God Ki, something he'd definitely need if he wants to stand a chance against Beerus. It would be a repetitious 22 years before a break in the monotony occurs in age 761, with the arrival of Raditz. By this time, Kakarot is fully grown and even wears a variation of Saiyan armor that Whis created for him. The day of Raditz's arrival was not unforeseen. The wayward brother of Kakarot is someone that Whis has been keeping track of for some time, along with the other two surviving Saiyans that are with him, Nappa and Vegeta. When Raditz lands on Beerus' planet, Kakarot had already been taught that he is the last surviving Saiyan, so Raditz appearing before him was a shock to say the least, but that was nothing compared to what Raditz would soon reveal: the fact that he is Kakarot's brother. Not only were there Saiyans alive, but one of them was his own brother, his family. Kakarot immediately turns to Whis, expecting an answer for the lies he's been told his whole life. Now, Kakarot, I'd take this news rather lightly if I were you. Why don't you ask your brother here what he and the other Saiyans are currently doing? So, he does just that. And Raditz explains the conquering of worlds, the killing of innocents, and the death of children, all for the sake of conquest. Whis asks Kakarot if he thinks this brother of his is someone to be admired, or would be seen as someone worthy of Beerus' destruction. Kakarot looks back to Raditz with disdain. Senseless destruction isn't the way to keep the universe balanced. Those who hunt innocence and tip the universe's balance are the ones who deserve to be destroyed. So without further conflict or hesitation, Kakarot powers up without activating God Ki, breaking Raditz's scouter, then eliminating him in a single, swift attack. The destruction of Raditz's scouter sent a signal to Vegeta and Nappa. While Nappa was concerned for Raditz's well-being, Vegeta was more interested in the power that destroyed Raditz's scouter. This must mean Kakarot wasn't as weak as they thought, but still, to destroy Raditz's scouter, that would mean he was in his Ozaru form for certain. Clearly, Kakarot would make an invaluable ally to have, especially if Vegeta ever hoped to overthrow Frieza. So, Vegeta tells Nappa they're heading to Kakarot's location immediately. There, they will recruit him to their case, whether he likes it or not. Nappa agrees, and the two unknowingly head to the world of the god of destruction, Beerus. The two elite Saiyan warriors arrive a year later, age 762. As Kakarot is in the middle of his training with Whis. While he's not quite ready to use the suits that Whis had Vegeta and Goku train in Dragon Ball Super, he is wearing a weighted variant of the Saiyan armor Whis made for him previously. As the two approach, Whis looks to Kakarot and tells him to handle them like he did Raditz. Kakarot asks Whis to remove the weighted clothing, but Whis tells him that this battle will also be training. Kakarot then realizes that these two are also Saiyans. He asks Whis if he was aware of them as well. Naturally, I'm aware of the living Saiyans, but my purpose is to train you for Lord Beerus, not reunite you with your species, unfortunately. Kakarot scoffs, but tells Whis he'll decide this himself. Kakarot steps towards them, and Nappa goes to meet him halfway. But Vegeta tells him not to get careless, as it's possible he won't want to join their cause. So, Nappa approaches cautiously, but more optimistic than Vegeta. Once they are facing each other, Kakarot asks if Nappa and Vegeta are like Raditz. He asks if they conquer worlds and destroy civilizations. Nappa laughs and says he doesn't want to gloat, but they've each taken out their fair share of worlds. That's enough for Kakarot, who immediately launches Nappa back with a single punch and fires a blast at him to finish him off. He then turns his attention to Vegeta, who's already beginning to power up. Vegeta's power far exceeds Nappa and Raditz. The planet begins to tremble at his power being unleashed, and for a brief moment, Kakarot unknowingly lets out a smile. His Saiyan genes are excited for the first time he has the chance to have a real fight. The chance to test himself. The Oracle Fish makes her way over to Whis as Kakarot and Vegeta begin to battle. She asks what's going on, and Whis simply says that this is part of training. The Oracle Fish is confused since Kakarot should far surpass Vegeta, but Whis explains, I didn't quite expect this myself, actually. Even with the weighted clothing, he should still be much stronger than the Prince of the Saiyans. Yet, he chooses to hold back, even though I never told him to do so. It seems he's actually enjoying fighting. As per usual, Whis is correct. While Kakarot and Goku are not the same, at the end of the day, loving fighting is something baked into Kakarot's very soul. It's the very essence of the character, regardless of the planet he lands on or who he's raised by. The fight goes on for some time. They trade blows, and as they do, Kakarot continues to grow. His body and movements become sharper and more fluid in response to the restrictions placed upon him, eventually growing to the point that he had nothing left to gain from fighting Vegeta. Whis notices this and is ready to have Kakarot finish it. But then he realizes that Vegeta is also growing in power. As we said in Dragon Ball Super, Goku and Vegeta just sparring and training together is the quickest way for them to grow, and he realizes the same truth here. With this in mind, Whis decides to increase the weight of Kakarot's armor in order to keep the gap between the Saiyans as small as possible. By using Vegeta as a test for Kakarot, they can grow his power even more quickly for Lord Beerus. This fight's relevance isn't something to be understated. This is the longest fight to ever happen in Dragon Ball, lasting for a month straight as Whis simply replenishes their stamina and heals them whenever they're close to faltering. This has the unintended side effect of granting both of them Zenkais as well, which in turn has the gap between the two diminishing over time. Vegeta can't understand it himself, but he's enjoying this battle. However, he fears that should he be deemed useless by Whis, his life may be ended then and there. Of course, Vegeta is right. Whis is tired of the spectacle, and he thinks it's time Kakarot went back to training his godly powers rather than focusing on the fundamentals. So, he removes Kakarot's suit and tells him to use his god form to end this fight once and for all. Kakarot wasn't happy to stop fighting, but he knew he had no choice, so he pulls back and transforms into Super Saiyan God. The raw power of his transformation after gaining power from his battle with Vegeta makes the universe shake. Vegeta simply stands no chance at all. Kakarot knocks Vegeta into the ground, then stands above him, charging a ki blast as he does. Before he gets the chance to kill Vegeta, the Saiyan Prince says,
"Avenge our people, Kakarot. Use this power to kill Frieza."
With that said, Vegeta puts his guard down and accepts his fate. Death at the hands of the Super Saiyan God. Vegeta had his suspicions about Frieza destroying Planet Vegeta, but was never able to confirm them in life. Regardless, the Saiyan Prince hopes to see the Emperor defeated for enslaving the Saiyans for so many years. Unfortunately, Kakarot doesn't know who or what Frieza is, and Whis refuses to tell him, saying that such things are irrelevant to Kakarot's true purpose, training. So, Kakarot returns to his daily life of training. With power to spare, he focuses on growing his god powers, with Whis' ultimate goal for the Saiyan being the perfection of Ultra Instinct, something even Beerus couldn't achieve. From here, 16 years would pass until the fated day arrives. An explosion goes off in Beerus' palace, and the god is awoken to find out if the prophecy is true. Has his greatest rival truly come to face him? Beerus sizes up Kakarot and says he's definitely improved, but isn't sure if it's worth the wait. Being the strongest Saiyan in history doesn't really mean anything, since all the Saiyans are weak compared to Beerus to begin with. Before their bout, Beerus looks Kakarot dead in the eyes and says,
"I'm fighting with the intention to kill you. I suggest you do the same if you want to live."
Kakarot was expecting this to be a friendly match, but it seems his expectations were wrong. Whis looks at Kakarot proudly and signals the two to begin fighting. Kakarot starts by transforming into Super Saiyan God, which impresses Beerus immediately, happy that something good came from Whis' training.
"The Saiyans I'd known could only turn into giant monkeys. I'd never guessed they could turn into gods."
The two begin to exchange blows from here, and it seems like a fairly close fight. Beerus is clearly trying to win, and so is Kakarot, but both aren't showing everything that they have. Eventually, one punch from Kakarot connects perfectly against Beerus's face and sends the god flying back. That angers Beerus, who retaliates by utilizing what he knows of Ultra Instinct. He's not perfect at it, but he's able to dodge Kakarot's attacks from this point, eventually backing him into a corner where it seems like it's all over. Beerus charges a Hakai and says,
"You did better than I expected. This is truly a battle of gods. Unfortunately for you, I'm the only true god here."
It seems like it's all over for Kakarot, but he lets out a smile and thanks Beerus for the fun. Faster than Beerus could even perceive, Kakarot was no longer in front of him. The Hakai in his hand fades away as he stumbles backwards, only to bump into Kakarot, who is now in Ultra Instinct and in the uniform of the God of Destruction. Beerus looks to Whis, who shrugs, though he knew that the clothes were hidden underneath the armor. From the beginning, Whis knew this battle would decide who would be the God of Destruction for Universe 7. The Angel had gone as far as to inform the Grand Priest so the Supreme Kai may be delinked from Beerus, lest they want to wait for a new Supreme Kai to be appointed. So, without any further contention, Kakarot eliminates Beerus. While he had fun fighting him, his ego and his cowardice were both things that would cause the universe more harm than good. Someone needed to succeed him, and Kakarot was the only one who could. With Beerus dead, Kakarot is officially the God of Destruction for Universe 7. Once again, it seems as though Whis knew this was going to happen, but Kakarot agreed with the Angel, so he doesn't get upset with him for scheming. As the new God of Destruction, Kakarot has to maintain his God Ki at all times, so he's in a perpetual state of Super Saiyan God, never reverting to base form for any reason. Over time, this becomes incredibly easy, to the point that Kakarot isn't even sure if he remembers how to enter base form anymore. Think of this as a more extreme version of what Goku did with Super Saiyan in the Cell Saga. With his god form maintained and his position established, Kakarot begins to plan how to improve the universe, something Whis had instilled in him while educating him. You see, angels are guides to the universes. They are supposed to push everything in the right direction without directly interfering. Whis was presented a golden opportunity with Kakarot, the chance to raise a god of destruction from scratch. So Kakarot, along with Whis, begin to improve Universe 7, and they start with a visit to Supreme Kai, something Beerus hated doing. Once they arrive in the realm of the Kaioshin, Kakarot introduces himself to Shin, and they begin to discuss the state of the universe. Shin first explains that the most notable threat to the universe is Frieza, someone the Kai could admittedly defeat on his own, but isn't supposed to due to being a god of creation, not destruction. This name immediately sends Kakarot's mind back in time to the final moments before he killed Vegeta. This was the Saiyan Prince's final request, so he was even more inclined to eliminate the self-proclaimed Emperor of the Universe. Supreme Kai follows up by saying while Frieza is the most notable threat, there is a presence lurking in the shadows. Babidi is trying to revive the primal terror of the universe, Majin Buu. After those two are handled, the next step would be repairing the destruction, though that would take a lot of time to do. Kakarot understands and says he'll get started right away, having Whis bring him directly to Frieza's ship. Once he's on board, Kakarot can tell that something feels off, like he's being watched, but also like the ship is more than just the ship. He decides not to worry about it and begins to make his way deeper into the ship, eliminating any soldier that dares step in his path. Kakarot eventually ends up at the head of the ship, where he's confronted by Frieza. The Emperor looks at him with confusion. While the outfit was that of Beerus's, the person wearing it clearly wasn't the previous God of Destruction. "After making such an entrance, I apologize if I don't seem in the mood for hospitality. So please, tell me who you are before I end your life." Kakarot introduces himself as the new God of Destruction, the Saiyan that defeated Beerus. This shocked Frieza even further. Not only was Beerus defeated, he was defeated by a Saiyan. Kakarot asks Frieza if he knows who Vegeta was. Depends which one you mean. There were 4 of them after all, though I only had the displeasure of knowing 2. The Vegeta I knew was a terrible person who did unforgivable things. Frieza likes where this assessment is going. However, he had pride in who he was. Pride you crushed with your rule. In his final moments, he had one request. Frieza now sees where this is going and transforms into his final form, and he flies at Kakarot at full speed, who dodges the sneak attack and grabs Frieza by the tail. He tells the Emperor that his lack of pride is pitiful, and begins to use his other hand to punch Frieza rapidly, with no signs of stopping until he suddenly does. Frieza is incredibly injured, and Kakarot tells him that was 1 punch for every Saiyan Frieza killed on planet Vegeta that day. Kakarot drops the Emperor on the ground and charges a blast to finish him off immediately. Kakarot makes his way over to Whis and tells him he has a plan to undo Frieza's destruction. After Kakarot and Whis leave, the remains of Frieza disappear from the ship, being teleported to Babidi, who had teleported a floor of his ship into Frieza's. That was the presence and uneasiness Kakarot felt. With Frieza defeated in Babidi's ship, his energy was collected, pushing the meter very close to full. Buu's resurrection was almost complete since Babidi was slowly stealing energy from entire worlds, including all of Earth. Side note, the story of Earth is something I discussed in the original version of This What If, but I'm planning to do a video dedicated to the topic of an Earth without Goku, so just keep an eye out for that instead. I'd rather not bloat an already long video. Kakarot and Whis head to a mysterious planet that Kakarot destroyed the surface of. This uninhabited world is actually a Super Dragon Ball, something Kakarot learned about when Whis taught him about the Namekians. These wish orbs should be scattered between Universe 6 and 7, so Kakarot begins to collect them. The only problem is that Champa is already collecting them as well. With both hunting the Super Dragon Balls, it was inevitable that they'd run into each other eventually. Once they meet, Kakarot introduces himself and asks Champa what he plans to use the Super Dragon Balls for. Champa says he isn't sure yet and asks what happened to his brother. Instead of answering, Kakarot looks to Whis, who tells his sister Vados that they need the Super Dragon Balls to improve their universe. If Champa got in the way of that, Zeno and the Grand Priest would be very displeased. Champa audibly gulps and says they can take the Dragon Balls, since he doesn't really need them anyway, and Kakarot agrees, and both part ways. Now, having all 7 of the Super Dragon Balls, Kakarot wishes for all the damage done to good people by Frieza and his minions to be undone. This results in many planets being revived, including one particular planet Kakarot is interested in visiting. After this wish, a few months passed, and Kakarot is contacted by the Supreme Kai. Babidi is making his move, and it seems that Buu is revived. Kakarot had wanted to avoid this, but Babidi's teleporting ship made him hard to keep track of. Luckily for Kakarot, he has some tricks of his own now. So, Whis and Kakarot make their way to Babidi and Buu's location. Once there, Kakarot easily defeats Dabura and gets ready to take down Majin Buu. However, instead of eliminating him quickly, Kakarot is taking his time with the monster. Whis is perplexed since Buu isn't really the type to spur Kakarot's enthusiasm for fighting, but he trusts Kakarot's judgment. Slowly, Kakarot is weakening Majin Buu, something Babidi thought was impossible. But Kakarot has a trick up his sleeve: forced spirit fission. When Kakarot revived the planets destroyed by Frieza's forces, this included Yardrat, and in the months since their revival, Kakarot had trained with Paibara to learn the art of spirit control. This allowed him to sense the Kais within Buu, and ultimately leads to Kakarot separating those Kais from him, leaving only Kid Buu, who can easily be eliminated by the God of Destruction. With the Grand and North Supreme Kais freed, Kakarot asks Whis why they have so many Kaioshins in Universe 7. "Truly, this is a mystery of Universe 7, my lord. Unfortunately, the answer is unimportant for now." Kakarot rolls his eyes at the response and tells them all to put their hands on his back. He says to give him a second since he's new at this, but he's eventually able to sense Supreme Kai and teleports to the realm of the Kaioshin. With the Kais reunited and the threats to the universe destroyed, all Kakarot has left to do is wait another year before the Super Dragon Balls can be used again and repair all the damage Babidi did as well. So, Kakarot trains on Yardrat to fully master spirit control until eventually the Super Dragon Balls are ready to be used again. He repairs all the damage Babidi did and the universe is at peace, their god of destruction saving it not only from those known threats, but even showing Zeno and the Grand Priest that given time and patience, universes have the ability to work themselves out, so they don't need to destroy them just yet. However, even with Kakarot as the god of destruction, peace cannot always last. While the head of the greatest empire in the history of Universe 7 was killed, the army itself remained. It was tattered and scrambled, but they still existed. All they needed was someone to look to in order to reform. Lucky for them, such a person was ready to take over, or should I say, reclaim the empire he once held. Enraged by the death of his son and further aggravated by the always vigilant eyes of the new god of destruction, King Cold was looking to reform his empire and take his revenge on the new god. Working with Beerus was easy. A superficial and lazy god is easy to manipulate into letting you do things, but Kakarot was no such god. Their new god is a Saiyan that seemingly has no emotion and no attachments. To destroy this god would require raw power. You cannot manipulate someone who desires nothing. After reclaiming control of the Empire and pulling it back together, word reached Kakarot that Frieza had been replaced by his father.
My lord, it appears that Frieza's father has gathered his family's empire and brought them back under his heel. What shall we do about this obvious slight against you?
Kakarot replies,
Slights against me mean nothing, though we should pay the new emperor a visit to establish some ground rules. Frieza's path of senseless mortal destruction cannot be allowed to continue through his father.
With that, Kakarot asks where the returning emperor is now, and Whis says he's on a ship only 10 minutes away from their planet.
Alright, let's pay Frieza's father a visit then.
The two make their way to King Cold and his ship. Once they arrive, they remain outside the ship. Kakarot is cold but respectful. He asks to be let in the ship, and so King Cold's soldiers ask if they should let him in. The king's face turns into a snarl, but he shakes it off and tells his men to let them in. The two enter the cockpit of the ship and both bow to King Cold.
To think a god would bow before me. Beerus would never do such a thing during his time.
Kakarot raises his head and says that he hopes they can work together in a way that betters the universe. King Cold puts on a smile and replies that he is currently revitalizing all the planets in his empire to give them better people and better quality of life. He wishes to see the universe prosper and is sorry that his son did not uphold that mission as he intended for him to do. Kakarot is clearly skeptical, but he has no evidence to do anything to King Cold. He could only hope that his instincts are wrong. Just to make sure that King Cold kept his word, he asks Whis to keep an eye on him. However, Whis suggested a better idea.
Perhaps someone from the Galactic Patrol could monitor King Cold and his army for us. I believe their top agent Beerus would be a great fit for the job.
Kakarot considers this for a moment, but ultimately agrees to meet with Beerus at least and ask him to watch over King Cold's army and their actions. They arrive at the Galactic Patrol headquarters and find Beerus quickly. All of the other patrolmen are in shock that the God of Destruction actually exists, but Beerus seems unfazed by this information.
Beerus, it's been quite a while since I've seen you.
Kakarot looks to Whis with an annoyed look.
You didn't tell me he was an angel.
Beerus asks Kakarot to remain quiet as he's simply an angel in training and observing this universe to learn, so that's not information that's publicly known. Kakarot brushes him off with a quick apology and asks Whis why he wants Beerus to watch King Cold for them. Whis replies that performing tasks ordered by the God of Destruction would be great training for this soon-to-be angel, as that is part of an angel's responsibilities. Kakarot thinks about it and ultimately agrees to let Beerus help them monitor the new Galactic Emperor. With the order given, Beerus heads off to monitor the area around King Cold, and Kakarot flies back to his own planet with Whis. Time passes before anything of note happens, but finally, Beerus contacts Whis via his staff to inform him that King Cold has been helping to restore not only planets that are inhabited by his people, but he's also terraforming worlds to make them more inhabitable going forward. Kakarot lets out an annoyed sigh, not because he has any issue with what King Cold is doing, but is instead annoyed that the Kaioshin hasn't already done something similar in order to raise their mortal level. Glad that his instincts weren't correct, Kakarot returns to his daily life of training, discussing potential plans for the universe with Whis, and resting. Things seemed almost too perfect to be true. And they were. King Cold was terraforming worlds and keeping true to his promise to increase the quality of life for the members of his empire. But this was a guise. His good deeds were actually hiding his true intentions, hunting for powerful warriors that could potentially bolster his army and allow him to attack the god that took away his son. On the quest to find fighters, his army came across an inhospitable planet that only seemed to be home to monsters, a world called Vampa. Much like Chilai and Lemmo did in Dragon Ball Super Broly, King Cold's scouts would not only find Broly and Paragus, they would also notice the incredible and unrestrained power of Broly. Word quickly reaches King Cold of the two Saiyan survivors, and that one has a power beyond comprehension. The king quickly has them brought to his ship so he may inform them of the plans that will soon unfold. As they are brought on King Cold's ship, Beerus notices that these two Saiyans are new, and it was unlike King Cold to have any guests at all. Using his staff, he decided to spy on the conversation taking place in case it was pertinent to the god of destruction Kakarot. King Cold opens by telling the two Saiyans the fate of Planet Vegeta and how they are two of the three remaining Saiyans in the universe. Paragus' quest for vengeance hadn't been swayed over the years, and so he asked if King Vegeta was still alive. The looming tyrant simply shook his head and informed Paragus that not only had King Vegeta died long ago, but his son had died at the hands of the third living Saiyan. This third Saiyan was a problem for the Empire, and so he beseeched Paragus to help him eradicate such a nuisance with the help of his son. Of course, should Paragus refuse the offer, he can return to planet Vampa at once with no terraforming done to the planet. The elderly Saiyan realizes he has no choice in the matter, so he agrees to help King Cold in his fight against Kakarot. Broly throughout this whole conversation remains quiet, not showing any interest in what's being discussed. King Cold looks at Broly and asks,
"Has this boy ever had a real fight before?"
Paragus replies no, and so King Cold said that Broly would train alongside the king himself. He would need knowledge in order to fight appropriately.
"I figure 2 months should suffice. Then we will pay our Saiyan friend a visit."
Beerus was glad that he had listened in and reported back to Kakarot that King Cold had planned to betray him the whole time. He was preparing a warrior to fight him as they spoke. "What shall we do, my lord? Should I make preparations for immediate departure?" Kakarot thought about it and replied that no, they'd wait the 2 months that King Cold wants. But he told Beerus to go to the Galactic King and tell him to prepare his forces for an overtaking of the Cold Army. "No matter how hard I try to train you to be different, your Saiyan blood always boils when a challenge is put in front of you." Kakarot smirks and goes back to his training. 2 months would be over before you know it, and so would come the fated battle. Finally, 2 months had passed. Beerus helped the Galactic King organize his army, and he returned to watching King Cold in case of any preemptive strikes. By using his angel powers rather than hiding as a galactic patrolman, Beerus was in no need of ships or communicators at this time, and so he'd been out of touch with the patrol for months. But this was something he had to do. Beerus informs Kakarot and Whis that King Cold and his men were on the move towards Kakarot's planet. After that, Beerus returns to the Galactic Patrol headquarters. All that was left to do was to wait for them to arrive on his doorstep. The ship landed and out walked King Cold. Shortly after followed Paragus and Broly. The tall emperor looked down at Kakarot and told him that his era has come to an end. A Saiyan that even surpasses the gods has been found, and he would take Kakarot down. Despite him going on this grand speech, Kakarot's eyes locked with Broly's. The god of destruction walked towards the powerful Saiyan and eyed him up. No. Kakarot's only word to Broly was one of disapproval. He had no interest in fighting and destroying a mortal with potential, someone different than those ordering him. Before the word no even hit Broly's ears, Kakarot had blindsided him and knocked him out. King Cold and Paragus were in utter disbelief. The power of this god was beyond anything they could even comprehend. Don't worry, I only knocked him out. You two won't be so lucky. Paragus trembled and fell backward while King Cold launched forward with an attack at Kakarot. His disappointment is immeasurable. With a single Hakai, he destroys both King Cold and Paragus, but leaves Broly alive. Have you taken a liking to that one, my lord? Kakarot shakes his head. He can tell the mortals with potential to benefit the universe from those who don't have such potential. Kakarot tells Whis to alter Broly's memories of today. Have him remember that his father and King Cold abandoned him. They can't have another mortal in search of revenge on the gods. Then he tells Whis to get in touch with Beerus and the Galactic Patrol. They'll have a new recruit soon for Beerus to train. However, before he could contact Beerus, Beerus contacts Whis. He informs Kakarot that Moro, a great evil that threatened the gods 10 million years ago, was free once again. You see, the Galactic Patrol, in their infinite incompetence, had all their forces join the Galactic King for the takeover of Cold's army. This means at some point in the 2 months before King Cold attacked, Moro had escaped and started wreaking havoc on the universe. Over the staff, Beerus asks his older brother what they should do about this, and Whis simply replies, "You know our angel laws, Beerus. We are unable to interfere or pick sides in such affairs. We must simply advise and go along with the plan of our god of destruction." Whis looks over to Kakarot as he says this. The god of destruction was thinking how to handle the situation. Clearly, a world eater could easily undo all the mortal growth and prosperity that Universe 7 had achieved in his time as god of destruction, so action must be swift. Kakarot asks Whis to locate Moro with his staff. They are going to pay the ancient evil a visit. Beerus tries to stop Kakarot from acting hastily, but Whis ends communication with him before he has the chance to say anything more about Moro. Quickly, Whis locates Moro, and they can see that he's already consumed multiple planets, some of which were already inhabited. Kakarot was ready to pursue the Planet Eater, but before he could, Whis receives an urgent communication. But this wasn't from Beerus. This person calling is the great Kaioshin. As the only person to ever face down Moro, the Grand Supreme Kai was someone to advise the god of destruction that freed him from Buu. Should Moro have his full magic powers back, he would use trickery to not only avoid being destroyed, but also absorb the power of Kakarot, making Moro practically unbeatable if he achieves that. They would need a strategy to stop this threat. Meanwhile, Moro was eating planet after planet. He was refueling his power, and in search of a method to unlock his still restricted magic, he came across a planet called Namek. This, of course, is the original home of the Namekians, since Namek was never destroyed by Frieza in this timeline. Upon arrival, Moro did what he has done to every planet so far, taken one of the beings living there and reading their mind. Mind reading is a basic magic skill that even Babidi could use. Moro was superior to Babidi in every single way, so this is a small feat for him to perform even when his power is restricted. Now, Moro knows not only that the Dragon Balls can grant him wishes, but also knows how to activate them. To start, he eats away at the people of Namek, knocking them out before they could even put up a fight. Next, he collects the Dragon Balls by flying around the planet quickly. Third, he uses the Namekian language he learned from the mind he read to speak his wish into existence. In this story, he'd have no need to release the prisoners of the Galactic Patrol. No one was pursuing him, and he was already in decent physical condition since he was able to eat planets before he made his way to Namek. Moro's second wish is simply to have an incredibly fast ship, and for his third, a guide of every planet that Porunga can find. Just like Shenron, Porunga can't chart the entire universe, but he is able to get a good amount of his galaxy. After this, Moro finishes eating Namek and is ready to face anyone that dare stand in his way. Over on Kakarot's planet, the Grand Supreme Kai has come to strategize a way for them to defeat Moro. Supreme Kai Shin was left in the realm of the Kaioshin with Kibito and South Supreme Kai to protect him because his death would mean the death of Kakarot as well, who is crucial for the defeat of Moro. Kakarot emphasized that his power should be more than enough to beat Moro regardless of his magic, but the Grand Supreme Kai disagrees entirely, being scared that any attack could result in Moro cultivating greater power. They needed to seal Moro's magic away before it could be used against them. Kakarot asked Whis what Moro was up to currently, and Whis tells the impatient god that Moro has already destroyed 5 more planets since the last time he checked in on him. Kakarot has had enough with waiting, and says he'll be going after Moro. This universe was in shambles before me, because the gods were too afraid to act. I lack that fear, and so, if you want our universe to prosper, you'll come with me. The Grand Supreme Kai simply shook his head, and he said he'd stay just in case anything goes wrong with Kakarot's attack, but he hopes that the new god of destruction can take care of it.
My lord, Moro has just arrived on another planet. Shall we meet him there before he can devour its power?
Kakarot nods and the two go off to face the ancient evil. Once they arrive, the planet is already unstable, torn asunder by Moro's vicious magic. Kakarot flies to Moro, and before the Planet Eater can even speak, he punches him as hard as he possibly can. However, Moro was able to take the hit.
That attire looks godly. Are you perhaps a friend of the great Lord of Lords?
Kakarot doesn't answer the question and instead tries to power up, but he can't do it. His strength is fading.
What's wrong? Did you not know I could absorb your power?
Kakarot looks to Whis, and Whis flies over. The angel instantly heals Kakarot back to full power, and he powers up and goes back into the fight. Initially, Kakarot planned to use Force Spirit Fission to steal energy back from Moro, but it seems like that would take too long. The energy he's absorbing from Kakarot is just too great to overcome with Force Spirit Fission alone. As Kakarot flies in, he's even stronger due to him getting one of the few Zenkai boosts of his life. When his punch connects this time, Moro is sent flying. He didn't have a chance to eat Kakarot's energy yet, so he hasn't powered up at all. Despite the punch being effective, it wasn't remotely enough to stop Moro, and Kakarot's energy began to fall once again to Moro's magic. It was a vicious cycle of healing, then landing one hit, and then being drained again. It wasn't dealing enough damage to stop Moro entirely, but it was stopping him from consuming the energy he had taken. Finally, Kakarot has had enough. He tells Whis to ready the sword, and Whis understands immediately what the plan is. Whis heals Kakarot and at the same time equips him with a sword that looks remarkably similar to the Z-Sword. It would take Moro a little time to consume all the energy he gathered, so Kakarot used that extra second to activate Ultra Instinct, but only for a brief moment. He blitzes past Moro, slicing him as he does. Moro laughs that Kakarot thought a primitive weapon could stop him, but as he laughs, he is pulled into the blade and sealed for good. You see, Beerus sealed Elder Kai in the Z-Sword tens of millions of years ago. He also said that he could use a sealing technique on Immortal Zamasu as well, meaning that this isn't a one-off technique and is something in the God of Destruction's arsenal. Kakarot has also learned the sealing technique when training with Whis, and for the first time in his tenure as God of Destruction, he's needed to use it. The God of Destruction turns around and walks to Whis. He throws the sword to the angel and says to take care of that when they get back. They fly back to Kakarot's planet and inform the Great Lord of Lords that Moro has been defeated. The Great Lord of Lords apologizes for doubting Kakarot's abilities, but Kakarot tells him to think nothing of it. He asks the Kai to work with the other Kais to reconstruct the universe the way it was before Moro escaped from prison, and to stop remaining so inactive in mortal activity. The Great Lord of Lords agrees, bows, and returns to the realm of the Kaioshin. Kakarot asks Whis for the sword that holds Moro currently, and he stabs the sword into the massive tree that covers most of the planet. Forever, Moro would be on the planet of the God of Destruction. Should anyone try to unseal him, they would need to be an unheard of, overwhelming force. Beerus came to the planet to pick up Broly, who is still unconscious from his fight with Kakarot, enrolling the Saiyan into the Galactic Patrol and training him to be a benefit for the universe. Everything ends well for Universe 7, as well as the gods and mortals that inhabit it. However, the gods from other universes were not unaware of the best god in the history of the multiverse. One god of destruction in particular was very unsettled by the fact that Kakarot was the god of destruction of Universe 7, and this was none other than the brother of Universe 7's former god of destruction, Champa. Champa had been hunting the Super Dragon Balls again, but was stuck when it came to finding the last one. Vados asked Champa what he wanted to do with the Dragon Balls, since he already told Kakarot that he didn't want the Super Dragon Balls. The God of Destruction had been extremely tight-lipped since he found out Beerus was killed by Kakarot. Since it doesn't seem like he'll find the last Super Dragon Ball anyway, he decides to tell Vados. He planned on using them to erase Kakarot from existence. Revenge for his fallen brother was all that was on his mind. In principle, such an action wasn't prohibited. The killing of a god of destruction by another was fine so long as there was no actual fighting, but it was pointless to ponder what the consequences for such an action would be without appropriate means to perform them. Champa sighs and says that he has a backup plan, but it was the last resort. He tells Vados to ready her staff and to ready the inter-universal cube. They're going on a trip to Universe 7. Meanwhile, the day was normal for Kakarot and Whis. They went through the motions of training, discussing the state of the universe, and acting on anything that needed immediate attention. However, today's training was interrupted by a message from Whis' staff. It was none other than Beerus, who wanted to ask if he would be allowed to train Broly on the God of Destruction's world. They both had the day off from the Galactic Patrol, and they are unable to train seriously when confined to a ship. Whis looks to Kakarot, and the God of Destruction allows it. He feels that he could help Broly be a better Saiyan, and Whis could help Beerus be a better angel. So the two arrive on Kakarot's planet via ship as to avoid any suspicion. Kakarot is glad to see that all his plans have worked out. The universe was better than it had ever been. The Kaioshin was now actively participating in the flourishing of life throughout the universe and repairing the damage caused by Moro. With people like Broly on the Galactic Patrol, crime had already seen a decrease despite him only being there for a short time. It seemed like nothing could ruin the foundation he has established in the universe. But then again, he didn't consider anything coming from another universe. As Beerus is training Broly, seemingly out of nowhere, Broly is attacked, but the attacker went unseen by the large Saiyan. However, Beerus, Whis, and Kakarot all saw what had happened. Someone skipped through time. Champa's backup plan for dealing with Kakarot was none other than the legendary assassin of Universe 6, Hit. God of Destruction Kakarot asks Whis who that person is, and Whis tells him who Hit is, and as he's listening, he catches the assassin's fist in his hand, gripping it tight. Kakarot turns to look at Hit and asks him who sent him to this universe. Hit says nothing and tries to use time skip to escape, but it doesn't work. Kakarot is just far stronger than Hit, so he's surpassing that power exponentially. Fine, don't say anything. I'll make you a deal. If you can defeat the big guy you hit earlier, you can leave. But if you can't, I'll destroy you. Hit is sweating for the first time in his life. He'd never faced down a power so much greater than his own. Even Lord Champa seemed like nothing in comparison. With Broly, he at least feels like he has a chance to win and escape with his life, so he turns his attention to the hulking Saiyan. Kakarot nods to Beerus, who understands that he should coach Broly through this fight. anything can be used as training if you try hard enough.
My lord, shouldn't we try to find out who sent this assassin after you?
Kakarot smiles at Whis, almost chuckling at what the angel said.
Whis, you already know who sent him. He came from Universe 6, meaning he needed the cube that the gods and angels used to get here. I killed Shampa's brother, my predecessor, so the motive is there too. It's really obvious when you consider it.
Whis smiles as well. The god of destruction he had raised was not only powerful, but intelligent. He had done a good job with this one. As Broly and Hit continued to fight, both were getting stronger. Hit's time skip was improving rapidly to coincide with Broly's rapid power gain. The two were made to have this fight, as both were seeing the benefits of it. This worked even better than Kakarot thought, but it was about time Champa came out of hiding. Kakarot put his fingers on his head and teleported over to where he sensed Champa.
I knew this Yardrat technique would be useful.
Kakarot asks Champa what brings him to Universe 7. Surely his fellow god of destruction was chasing down Hit for stealing the cube, right? Champa's face contorted in rage as he looked at Kakarot. He wasn't hiding anything. Kakarot tells Champa to calm down. Even if they did fight and break the rules, there's no chance Champa could win, and Champa knows it. Instead of fighting, Kakarot would give Champa a gift, even better than revenge, as a gesture of goodwill between the universes. But first they should get their subordinates. It would be unfortunate for Hit if he somehow managed to kill Broly. Champa thought it over and agreed. However, if Kakarot's gift isn't up to Champa's expectations, he'd kill Broly himself. Kakarot agrees, willing to gamble Broly's life at Champa's discretion. The two fly over to stop the fight between Hit and Broly, a fight that resulted in both growing immensely in terms of power, but wearing both out in terms of stamina. Kakarot steps in and stops Hit by quickly knocking him out. Broly rubs the back of his neck. He vaguely remembers when Kakarot did that to him as well. Champa and Vados are shortly behind, and Vados asks Champa if there's any gift that would make up for how he feels. Champa says that the life of his brother is something more precious than anything in the multiverse, even if they didn't get along perfectly, so taking away Broly is the only thing that could possibly appease him. Kakarot hands Hit over to Vados, who puts the assassin in the cube. Kakarot then looks to Whis and tells him to stay here with Broly and Meris. He'll be going to that place. Whis nods at the god of destruction and wishes him a safe trip. Then, Kakarot turns his attention towards Vados and Champa. Without a word, Kakarot makes his way onto Champa's cube. He tells Champa that his gift waits for him in Universe 6, but they have to make a stop along the way. Champa joins Kakarot in the cube and Vados begins to pilot it away. On the way off of Kakarot's world, she asks where they're going. Kakarot says they have to stop at the nameless planet in neutral space between Universe 6 and 7. Once there, Kakarot reveals that he knew of Champa entering Universe 7 in search of the Super Dragon Balls again. Whis made sure to inform him after all. So Kakarot also decided to find one and keep it away from Champa. Luckily, Champa never thought to check neutral space between universes, so the secret kept itself. But to get Champa's gift, he'd need to use all 7. Kakarot asks Vados if she'd be kind enough to take this Super Dragon Ball with them to Universe 6, and she obliges reluctantly. Once they reach Champa's planet, they gather the orbs together, and Champa tries to exclaim his wish immediately, but Kakarot just shakes his head. Despite him trying to collect the Super Dragon Balls, Champa clearly has no idea how to use them. Kakarot calls forth the Dragon of the Gods, a spectacle that caught Champa off guard, and in the language of the gods, Kakarot makes his wish. But since he was caught up in the moment, Champa couldn't hear what he said. Kakarot smirks and says that Champa should be satisfied with his gift. He then asks Vados to return him to Universe 7, but Champa doesn't see anything, and he wasn't handed a present, so he quickly goes to stop Kakarot from leaving. However, a hand on his shoulder stops him before he can move. He turns around to see who would dare hold back a god of destruction, only to see his brother behind him. Beerus is alive once again.
That Saiyan was my own fault. He deserves to have replaced me.
This calm nature wasn't like Beerus. For the first time in his life, Champa can see his brother Beerus is showing respect towards another god of destruction.
Hey Kakarot, don't think this makes us even. Now that I'm alive and immortal, I'm going to fight you again one day.
Kakarot simply waves back as he walks away, satisfied with how the situation turned out. Kakarot returns to his life as a god of destruction and back to his routine. Life was good once again in Universe 7. Just a reminder, only 20% of the people who watch these videos are subscribed, so make sure you hit that sub button if you haven't yet. And thank you for watching the full story of What If Goku Was Sent to Beerus' Planet.